Hi everybody. Today's video is about the ketogenic diet and some questions around that someone posted on one of my other videos. Just before jumping into the video, if you don't mind taking a quick second to please like or share or subscribe or post a quick comment on my video, I'd really appreciate it. So thanks in advance for taking a second to do that. And as per usual, nothing I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. This is for informational purposes only. And if you need medical advice, please talk to your healthcare provider to get that advice. So the question goes like this, and the question was posted on one of my other videos, which was me posting an episode of my Overcoming Chronic Illness podcast. So the topic was stubborn weight gain, nuanced lab ranges, and more with Leanne Vogel, who's a nutritionist from down in the States. So if you're that's kind of the context for on which the question was posted. So it reads like this. I'm curious to know if there are studies on how keto impacts the microbiome. I understand excessive intact oils negatively impacts gut flora. I'm not sure if excessive intact oils is a autocorrect issue or not, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But I see refined oils in the same light as refined sugars. The body was never designed to process these components without fiber, water, enzyme, nutrients, and beneficial bacteria. So thank you for the question. I think I'll answer as best I can here, and if there are bits of the question that maybe autocorrect threw me off key or flew me off the track kind of thing, off the trail, but there's some idiom there that I'm missing. But anyways, let me know. Just post in the comments, and I'll flesh out the answer in a future video. So in terms of studies impacting or on how keto impacts the microbiome, I'm not sure about studies specifically looking at keto. I do, to my understanding though, there have been studies looking at the impact of a carnivore diet, or at least a heavily meat-based diet, which would generally overlap with keto in a lot of cases. Not always, of course. Some keto is usually more moderate protein, so maybe not perfect overlap there, but certainly the common thread there between keto and carnivore would be generally no carbs to speak of, or very, very few carbs to speak of. So what I'm alluding to there is that Dr. Paul Saladino, a medical doctor, also known as the Carnivore MD, he's written a book about the carnivore diet, has lots of Instagram content and probably YouTube content as well. I can't remember now, but has been talking about carnivore for a long time, and I really enjoy listening to Dr. Saladino. I think he's a really smart guy. He's very enthusiastic. I'm not saying that I would necessarily regurgitate everything that he says word for word. I wouldn't. I think there's certain things that I don't know if disagree is a strong enough word, but maybe we have different take-home messages from certain things that I've heard him talk about. But I do appreciate his content, and I think he gets a lot of interesting ideas out there. Anyways, I really enjoy on his he has a podcast as well. I think, how do I know about the Carnivore MD? Right, he has a podcast as well. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but anyways, he's has had a number of debates on his podcasts, and I think he's worth listening to. Especially where now in the last maybe couple of years or so, give or take, he's transitioned from being full carnivore as he was for quite a long time to having now it's more of a meat-based diet. He's eating fruit and honey and like a few other things in there as well. So he's not 100% carnivore, which I think from what I've seen in clinical practice, what I've seen with my own health, I think that taking more of a meat-based approach is I think a better approach than being full carnivore. Anyways, circling back to the question at hand. So studies looking at the keto diet impact on the microbiome. Again, not sure about that specifically, but what Dr. Saladino talked about with one of his guests on a few different podcast episodes that I heard anyways, they were talking about some of the studies that have been done looking at the microbiomes of folks in indigenous cultures in different parts of the world that follow a primarily meat-based diet. If memory serves, I think it was looking at folks who are following just a straight-up meat-based diet. And they do indeed have notably different microbiome makeups than those of us who eat a more omnivorous diet. And that makes sense because, as kind of alluded to in the question here, when we're not eating carbs or we're not eating fiber and things like that, or having very, very low amounts of those in our diets, then that is going to have an impact on the microbiome. For anyone listening who's had undergone treatment or some kind of workup for SIBO or large intestinal bacterial overgrowth or yeast overgrowth or whatnot, you would know that carbs can really feed those microbes, which is why we generally kind of pull back on those in the diet, and especially with complex carbohydrates. And that's because they're the food source for the microbes, but they are a food source for the probiotics and different commensal bacteria in our guts as well. So my understanding is that the microbiome of folks who eat a more meat-based diet or a meat-based diet or an entirely meat diet have a very different looking microbiome, and yet it's like, well, what's the relevance of that though? Just because the microbiome is different doesn't mean that it's good or bad. Different doesn't mean good or bad. So is it good or bad? And what's, to my understanding, been observed by looking at folks in different, indigenous cultures where, they're still following like very much a hunter-gatherer, modern day hunter-gatherers folks who are still living a very, very traditional existence in different parts of the world, these hunter-gatherer tribes or whatnot, they, to my understanding, tend to be pretty darn healthy. They tend to not have the prevalence, if hardly any incidence, to my understanding, of a lot of the modern day health concerns that we have, in our modern day society. So like inflammatory bowel disease and cancer and neurological disorders and things like that. So I guess at the end of the day, where I do believe that there is published evidence that eating a meat-based diet, and I very much assume that could be extrapolated to keto as well, just not sure if those studies have been done specifically, where that would lead to a change in the gut microbiome. I don't know that there's any evidence that that is a bad thing, that the different microbiomes of folks who are eating more meat or maybe eating keto would look different, but different, again, doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't guarantee bad or good. It's just different is different. And indeed, there, I think, maybe some circumstantial evidence, which may have nothing to do with their microbiomes, but if eating more of a meat-based diet is associated with better health outcomes, not for everybody, but for some folks. And it seems that, again, these folks who are following these more traditional meat-based diets seem to be free or much a lower incidence of having these chronic health maladies that we have in our modern day societies. It suggests that maybe they're doing something right that we're doing wrong. Now, maybe it's because they're getting more vitamin D, they're getting more fresh air, maybe there's less pollution, maybe there's less stress, there's less social media, all these different things, lots of different factors, so hard to say for sure. But that is my best answer to this question. So thank you for the question. And if anybody has any questions or comments on this, if anybody has seen or read any literature that has looked at the microbiomes of folks on a ketogenic diet, please feel free to post in the comment section below. It'd be really interesting to hear about that. And if you have any questions about anything else, just post in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer as soon as I can.